Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Learning Kitchen Live. My name is Carolyn and I am one of the dietitians here at Community Servings. I am very excited to be with you today to show you how to make a recipe that is a favorite in my household. Today we're going to be making chickpea feta burgers. So when I think about recipes for Learning Kitchen Live, a lot of times I am creating or showing you recipes that I use in my house for myself and my family. And the reason being is I want to be able to show you recipes and foods that are nutritious and easy to prepare that don't cost a fortune. So when I'm recipe planning, menu planning for the week, there are 3 target areas or kind of goals that I try to get my recipes to achieve. And those are ingredients that are already in my house. So they might be in my pantry or my refrigerator. Something that is cost effective, so budget friendly and nice on the wallet. And then the third is something that can be either made ahead of time for later in the week or even frozen so that I could use it, in a couple of weeks from now for a meal for myself. And the awesome thing is this recipe hits all of those targets. So we're going to jump in and I'm going to show you how easy it is to put this recipe together. So for this recipe, the burgers, it actually only has 10 ingredients, and many of them you might have in your pantry or have things that are very easy to pick up at your local grocery store or where you go food shopping. So for the start of this recipe, what we're going to do, we're actually going to combine most of the ingredients in a food processor and blend them until they're well incorporated. So we're going to be using some chickpeas. I used canned chickpeas, so if you had ones that you made at home, fresh ones like on the stovetop, you could use those too. We have 1 carrot. We have a shallot and some garlic. A shallot, if you don't have this, you could also use an onion, so like a yellow or a white onion would also work too. We have some feta cheese, a little bit of oregano, and 1 egg. All right, and so what you're gonna do, we're just gonna let this blend up until it's pretty well combined. You might have to scrape down the sides so it's all incorporated, so we'll see how this goes. All right, so I'm just gonna scrape down the sides really quickly. What you're looking for is like the big pieces of the food, like the chickpeas and the shallots, the garlic and the carrots. You just want them to be well incorporated so you don't have these huge chunks. We're gonna let this go just for maybe another minute. All right, so that looks super good. So this is actually the bulk of the preparation for the recipe. Once you have your things in the food processor, it comes together super, super fast. So what we'll do is we'll take this blended mixture and we're just gonna add it to a bowl with some breadcrumbs, and then we're gonna combine everything. All right. Now, I personally find the easiest way to combine all of this is with your hands. I think it makes it much easier, especially since we're going to be forming these into patties. So I'm just going to put my gloves on here. And at this time too, if you wanted to season it a little bit more with some salt and pepper, you could. It really is dependent on your personal taste preferences. The cheese does add a little bit of saltiness, so we really don't need tons of extra salt in this recipe. All right. So like I said, I'm just going to start to combine these into patty form. So you just kind of want to make sure that the breadcrumbs and this mixture is all well combined. So as I talked about recipes that I like, I want them to hit a certain, couple different targets. One being cost effective, easy on the wallet, simple ingredients, and then something that can be utilized for meal prep. So we've already talked a little bit about simple ingredients, right? Things that I can find in my pantry. Most of these food items I usually have on hand. Things like canned chickpeas. Usually I have spices, salt, pepper. I typically have some garlic. The one thing that for this recipe that I really had to go out and buy was just the feta cheese. And that's something that could be utilized in future recipes. So it's definitely something that you're going to be able to use in the future, and it won't go to waste. All right, so that's all combined. And now this recipe as written, it'll make anywhere from 4 to 6 good sized burgers. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and we're going to put them just on a tray right here. So in terms of making ahead recipes, what I will do oftentimes is, for my household, make a burger or patty for myself and my husband. We also have a toddler at home, and he loves this recipe, but he's not going to eat a huge burger. So what I'll do instead is I'll make 2 patties, one for myself, one for my husband, and then the leftover batter or mixture, I'll actually make into smaller burger sizes that are more appropriate for him. Sometimes I make them into little nugget shapes that are kind of fun. And he'll enjoy this as a dinner meal, so he'll have it for dinner with us. And then I use the leftovers either for a quick food item that he can eat later in the week or a daycare lunch. So depending on what your family looks like, this could be something that could be great for you and for little ones, or it could just be something that's good for you to make and keep ahead of time in the fridge or freezer. All right. So that's it. I have my burgers or my patties here, which is awesome. Now, if you're in a pinch, what you could do is just cook these right away. There's no harm in that. So you would just cook them over medium-high heat for about 4 or so minutes on each side. If you do have a little bit of time, what I suggest is putting them in the fridge for 10 to 15 minutes. What this is going to do, it's going to keep them nice and firm. So it's going to form the patties and then make sure that it's a little bit easier for them to flip during the cooking process. So we're just going to go put these to the side, and I already had some that were chilling, so I can show you how to cook them off. All right. So these here have been cooking for a little bit, or chilling in the fridge for a little bit of time. And you can see the recipe or batch that I made earlier made more like 6 patties. So what we're going to do is just heat our burner over medium-high heat. You can use nonstick spray or a little bit of oil, which I'm going to do today. And the majority of these ingredients are ready to eat. The only thing in there is the egg that we want to make sure is cooked through. So again, you're going to cook them, 3 to 5 minutes, depending on your stovetop on each side, until they're golden browned and that egg is cooked through. All right, so we're going to pop these on here and let them start cooking. And based on the size of your pan, it might only be able to cook a couple at a time, but that's perfectly fine. All right, so we're going to let these cook up, and while we do that, I'm actually going to make a yogurt dipping sauce to go with this recipe. So as I said, I'm looking for things that are really easy to put together, and something that I make quite often is just a simple yogurt dipping sauce. So I always usually have some Greek yogurt on hand. Thanks, James. So I usually always have some Greek yogurt on hand, and then a variety of other herbs and spices. I have some assistance with making it pretty up here so you can all see. So for this, we're just going to use some Greek yogurt, a little bit of dill, and some garlic. Today I have a garlic clove and some fresh dill because that's what we have here in the facility that I'm at. If I'm being honest, at home, what I would use is dill that comes right out of like one of the glass jars. I'm not one to go out and buy fresh herbs. I'm not going to use them enough. They're more costly. So if I have the dried ones, I'm usually using those as my go-to in recipes at home. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your Greek yogurt, and then you're just going to add in your herbs and seasonings. So again, today what I have is just some dill, and then I have some garlic. You're just going to give that a stir until it's well combined. Now you could use this as is, or if you want a little acidity, you could also use some lemon juice. Again, I have a fresh lemon today, but at my house, I just use the stuff that's right out of the fridge in a bottle. So I promise you, if you're using things like herbs and seasonings out of a jar or bottled lemon juice, the recipes are going to be just as tasty and just as nutritious as if you were using the fresh ones. All right, and so we're just going to give that a final stir. And this is what's going to be used just to pair with our burgers. All right, so these are sizzling up pretty nicely over here. Like I said, we're just going to want to make sure that they're cooked through that egg. We're going to let them cook just a little bit longer on each side, and then we're going to flip them, and then you'll be able to see what that final product looks like. All right, so while these are finishing cooking up, I'll use this as an opportunity just to talk about the nutrition behind this recipe. The star really of this recipe is the chickpeas. As I said, I'm using canned chickpeas today, something that you can keep in your pantry all the time. They're really shelf stable and will last a while. If you're at the grocery store, we're going to want to look for the low sodium options, but sometimes they don't have them, and that's okay. It's still really important to include this type of plant-based protein in your diet. So if you don't find the low sodium option, you could always rinse them under running water for a minute or two, and that will help reduce some of the sodium content. So why are chickpeas such a good nutritional powerhouse? Why are we using this in the base of this recipe? And so why is because they are full of fiber and protein. And so because of this, when those two are kind of combined together, what that actually means is that they're a lower glycemic index food. And that's just really a fancy way of saying they help stabilize your blood sugars. So when you're eating them, your blood sugar is going to rise slowly over time versus spiking up and shooting back down. So this is super important if you are someone who maybe manages diabetes and you need to be aware of your blood sugar control. The fiber is also super important for our digestive health, and it can also help with your cholesterol levels. So as you can see, nutritious all around. All right. So depending on your pan size, it might be a little bit tricky to flip some of these. I think if I were doing this again, I'd probably cook 2 at a time just so you have some area and room to flip them, but we're making it work. All right. So we're just going to continue to let this cook a little bit before we show you the final product. All right. So as I said, this recipe, it hits all those targets that I'm looking for when I am cooking for myself and my family. Only really has 10 ingredients, which is awesome. So it's things that are readily available in my household. It is budget friendly. All in total, this whole recipe costs less than $6 to make. And as you can see how many patties it produces, it can really feed a full family. Or it's something that's really cost effective if you're just feeding yourself and you're making it ahead of time as like a meal prep option. And then finally, I referenced it earlier, but it really is a good option that you can make ahead of time for a later meal. So for my household, it makes sense to make the 2 individual patties and then others that my son can eat later in the week or just have in the freezer to pull out if he's hungry or we need something last minute. Another option is you can make these ahead of time, like the night before, and cook them off when you get home from work the next day. So you just leave them right in the fridge. So again, it cuts back on that cooking or prep time. And then sometimes what I'll do too is I'll make a double batch of these. So you can actually make a double batch of this recipe, and you can cook all the patties off and freeze them. So that way in the future, what you could do is just pull one out of the freezer and just cook it right on the stovetop. And that's a really fast, quick way to get a healthy meal on the table. All right. So with this recipe today, we're serving it with this Greek yogurt dip. This dip can be used with a lot of other recipes as well. So other types of veggie burgers. I've used it with fish, potatoes, roasted veggies, all sorts of things. And I'll switch up too what kind of herbs and seasonings go in there. You could also use this recipe and have it on like a traditional sandwich. You could over a salad with other roasted vegetables. The options are really endless for whatever your personal taste preferences are. All right, so you can see these are cooking up super nice. They're getting a little bit like crispy or golden brown. And again, the longer you keep them in the fridge, the easier they're gonna have time holding them together. So these were probably only in the fridge for maybe 10 minutes. So you can see they're slightly falling apart, but still holding their integrity pretty well. I found if I make these the night before, so say, I know tomorrow night we're gonna have these for dinner. I'll make them the night before, leave them in the fridge all day, and then I'll cook them off, and they really hold up their shape, which is really nice. All right. But with that, I'm just gonna plate these up so you can kind of take a look and see what these look like. So again, here you have our chickpea feta burgers with a Greek yogurt dip. It's a nice, healthy, nutritious recipe that is affordable, food items that you can find in your pantry, and then also can be a meal prep option. So I hope that you try it if you're interested. And if you like this video and you do try it, let us know how it goes. As always, we want to thank you for tuning in to Learning Kitchen Live, and we will see you back next week. Thanks.